3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the first episode of Morning Brew. I am your host, Will Brewer. And on this show, we're going to break down, recap the previous night's events, and we'll briefly look ahead to what's coming up. But what an event to get this show started. I mean, going forward, we'll have guests and we'll have people to help me break this down. But for this first one, I had to do this solo dolo. What an event. What an event. Last night, UFC 287, Pereira versus Adesanya 2 from Miami. I mean, I'm still buzzing from that. There's no way that you can come off an event like that and not still be buzzing the next day. I mean, it was amazing. I guess we'll just jump right into the main event, man. Israel Adesanya defeats Alex Pereira in the second round by knockout. This was everything for Izzy. He put it all on the line. This was as must win gets in this sport. You got a guy who's beaten you 3 times in combat, twice in kickboxing, once in the UFC. It's like Alex Pereira was a demon that just continued to follow Izzy around. And it was just crazy to see the transformation of Izzy. You know, normally he's a fun guy to be around. He engages with the media, but this fight week, he was just different. He was stoic. He didn't want to say too much. It was a complete different Israel Adesanya than what we were used to seeing. And I think he felt that this was as must win gets, because just the way that he was interacting with the media in the pressers, the way he was staring down Alex Pereira, just the look on his face when, you know, no one was asking him questions. He's just sitting there. He was locked in. And out of all the fighters that I've seen, this was as locked in as I've seen anyone. But in the fight, man, it's always so interesting to see when these two guys get in there and square off. Alex Pereira can get to him in a way that nobody else can. Alex Pereira is so tall. He's so long. His presence, he's able to chop at his legs in a way that nobody, like Whitaker, Gastelum, Cannonier, none of those other guys can get to him, can get to Izzy the way that Alex can. And it was just apparent right away that the game plan was to chop at his legs again and to halt that movement to where Alex can get to him and Alex can land that big shot. And he was so efficient with his leg kicks. Alex was so efficient. It looked like he was ready to do that for the entire 25 minutes. As long as it took for Alex to get to Izzy, he was willing to do that. And in the first round, it was very interesting to see Alex chop at his legs and to see Izzy, you know, willing to be in the pocket and to take shots. And over the course of time, it seemed like Izzy knew that his movement was getting kind of hindered a little bit. So he was more willing to be in the pocket and to exchange. And those exchanges are so scary when you're in there with Alex Pereira. They're so scary. They're so scary. Alex can lay anybody out with that left. And the first round was close. I don't know who I would have gave that first round to. It was very close. I think when I was watching it live, I edged it to Adesanya, but Pereira was landing the bigger shots. I felt like Izzy was just a little more active. But it was a close round. I'm not going to fight with anyone if they thought it was Alex who won that round. Very close round. In the second round, obviously, we know how the fight ended, but Alex fought a very good round. If that round would have ended, that round would have been for Alex Pereira if, you know, the closing sequence hadn't happened. But Alex Pereira did a great job continuing to chop at those legs, and they were adding up. You saw at one point Izzy buckled, and that was very concerning. It seemed like he was 1 or 2 leg kicks away from going down, or Alex was going to be able to find that shot to put Izzy out. So that closing sequence, though, when he landed that kick and then Izzy just it kind of seemed like he was accepting like, okay, this is it. I'm in danger. And Alex Pereira went in for the kill. He went in for the kill. He saw that he had him hurt, and he was going in for the kill. He's landing shots to the body. He landed a knee, and then Israel Adesanya. And I've been telling people this in text messages since it ended. I feel like Izzy put his life into those two shots that he knocked out Alex Pereira with. That first one, I felt like he just put his life, everything that he had in the tank, he put into those two shots. Buckled Alex Pereira, and the difference from it was kind of the same shot that he hit him with in the first fight, but there wasn't enough time on the clock to where he could follow up. But in this fight, he had the time. He hit him with two, and then it was a wrap. The hammer fist, and then of course, once the referee stopped it, Izzy pulls out the bow and arrows, the three of them. It was I don't know about you guys. I've seen a lot of celebrations. I've been watching sport for a long time. Chuck had that celebration. Tito had a good celebration. You know, we've seen guys winning emotional victories, and they just get so excited and they do some crazy stuff. But what Israel Adesanya did, that celebration has to be the greatest celebration of all time. That's one I don't think is debatable. That's not recency bias. That was just cold-blooded, to say the least. The three arrows, and then he breaks it at the end. I mean, it just symbolized everything that Izzy was going through. It was just a crazy fight, a crazy, shocking way to end that fight. You thought Izzy was done, and then he comes out with those two shots. The hammer fist from the gods, as he said in his post fight. It was crazy, bro. It was just crazy. He gets the win. He gets the title back. So when I think about this fight, when I think about what's next, I kind of think, man, what Izzy did was so great. Think about it like this: you got a team in the NBA, for you NBA fans out there, you got a team in the playoffs who's down 3-0. But somehow what Izzy did, that one win, I feel like that was the equivalent of winning a game 7 with one win. He won a game 7 and won the series. I mean, I don't know. Of course, like, it's there. The trilogy's there. You can go back to that. But right away after we've seen it 2 times in kind of a quick span, I don't really think you have to go right back to that. Alex Pereira, it seems like it's a tough cut to get down to 185. He's cutting weight early to get down to 185. That is a massive, massive man. And Izzy's not a small guy, but he makes Izzy look small. When they're in there, he fights so tall and everything. He makes him look small. And on fight day, I think I saw something that said that he's 220 or something like that on fight day. Like, that is incredible, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know if you go right back to that. Izzy likes to be active. I'm not sure if Alex goes right back in there and tries to fight Izzy again. Of course, you hear Izzy on the post-fight presser, and he says he wants Alex to take the harder road because Alex never experienced that. And I think that's a fair point, because Alex kind of had a fast track because Izzy was running out of opponents. At this point, Izzy's still kind of out of opponents. There's not really a number one contender out there for him to fight, at least not right away. Maybe Izzy takes some time off because that mental hurdle that he had to go through in order to achieve this accomplishment was substantial. So I'm not sure if we'll see Izzy right away. I mean, this is April. I do think we'll see him before the end of the year, but I don't think that we'll see him in July or August. I think maybe he'll take some time. Not what we're accustomed to, but I like what Dana White said about it. I think at 185, that cut is just too much. I think fighting at 205, where he's not killing himself in order to make the weight, And then there's a lot of fun matchups out there for him. There's a lot of stylistically pleasing matchups out there for him. I think Pereira against Rakic is very interesting. I think Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz is very interesting. I think Pereira versus the champ Jamal Hill is very interesting. Pereira versus Yuri Prohaska. Imagine that. Like, there's so many fun matchups out there. I don't really think we need to see Alex fight through that gauntlet in order to get back to Izzy. I think it would be a much bigger fight. Say Alex Pereira goes into 205, wins that belt, calls out Izzy, tells him to come try to take the 205 belt. Like, that's a big time fight right there. But I just think that Pereira he's the fast track. He's became champion and everything. I don't really think he needs to run through that gauntlet, because at some point the weight cut, plus with how skilled the guys are who are going to be fighting him, the Robert Whitakers, Marvin Vettori's, Apollo Costas, Derek Brunson, those guys with such high level wrestling, at some point Alex Pereira is going to run into one of those guys, and maybe he does well, knocks out everyone. But that his wrestling, it's growing. It's not where it needs to be right now, but it's growing. I think there's more stylistically pleasing matchups up at 205 where he's not depleted, where he's not killing himself. But Izzy knows that the hardest fight for him is Alex Pereira, and and now that he's finally gotten that win, I don't see him wanting to just go right back in there, even though Pereira is pretty much the number one contender and there's nobody else out there. I mean, we'll see if Khamzat Chimaev can get a win, but I'm hearing that Khamzat's not going to be fighting until October. So what does that mean for the middleweight championship? Does that mean Izzy takes time out? I think I'm leaning more towards Izzy takes some time and kind of lets this middleweight division play out and see what's next for him. I don't think there really needs to be a rush. He didn't, like, normally he has a guy who's next. Like, I remember he called out Yoel Romero. He called out Paulo Costa. He called out Cannonier. He called out Alex Pereira. He always had someone next. After this one, he didn't want to talk about anything about what was next, and rightfully so, because, like I said, that mental hurdle that he had to overcome in order to achieve that goal was just substantial. I think we'll probably see Izzy towards the end of the year. But that was one of the most shocking knockouts that I've ever seen. And just the meaning behind it, the stakes behind it, it was just shocking. An amazing result in Miami. Israel Adesanya, 2-time middleweight champion, one of the greats in UFC history, a future Hall of Famer, without a doubt. Congratulations to the Last Stylebender. Let's get into the co-main event, Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal. Going into this fight, man, we knew what was on the line, kind of, with Jorge Masvidal fighting in Miami. If he was to get a big time knockout, I mean, it would have been hard to deny him the next title shot. But Gilbert Burns is as good as it gets at 170, and it was a tall task. It was going to be a tall task for Jorge to defeat Gilbert Burns, and Jorge trains with some high level wrestlers, and fighting at 170 when he's coming up from 155 in his earlier career, he's had this at 170. He's had this this hole in his game where these guys are able to take him down and control him. And over the course of a 3-round fight, just that time, he didn't have enough time to be on his feet and to land something. But I will say, man, that second round was Gilbert controlled him pretty much the whole round, but Jorge had some time on the feet in the first round. He had some time on the feet in the third round. And while Jorge was doing well, he may have taken that first round. I don't think he really took as much advantage of being on his feet as I thought that he would have. And I think in the third round, a lot of those shots that Gilbert was landing was Jorge trying to prepare himself for the takedown. And that's kind of what got him knocked out against Kamaru Usman. He took the shots well from Gilbert, but I thought in the third round he was exhausted. He was ready to try to defend the takedown in the third. Gilbert did a great job mixing things up. It kind of looked like Jorge was a few shots away from going down, but he showed, toughness that he always shows. And we go to a decision. Gilbert Burns wins it via unanimous decision. I had it 2-1, but I'm not, 30-27. If you saw it that way, I'm not going to fight you on it. It was a great performance from Gilbert Burns going out there. And I'm not even going to say enemy territory because Gilbert has some fans out there. But, the MMA world, or at least in Miami, wanted to see Jorge Masvidal win that fight. And what that would have meant for his career. He may have gotten a title shot against Leon Edwards. We know the history, the three-piece in the soda. There was just a lot of history there between Leon and Jorge that remains unfinished, that you would have loved to see kind of play out on a pay-per-view setting and the press conferences and everything, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that. But props to Gilbert Burns going out there, taking care of business. He gets another win. It's been a great year for Gilbert Burns so far, and I'm excited to see what's next for him. I think if it were up to me, I would love to see Gilbert Burns fight Bilal Muhammad. I feel like both guys are just kind of one win away, and for me, Bilal doesn't even need one win. I feel like he's there right now, but I think Gilbert's on that. Gilbert's that name, that kind of sexy name. Coming off a win against Masvidal, he's that sexy name that Bilal may need on his resume for the MMA world, for the management to look at and be like, okay, now we'll give Bilal a title shot. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad. I'd love to see Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington. It doesn't look like Colby Covington's fighting any contender. It looks like it's going to be Leon versus Colby for the belt. But I think the next fight to make is Gilbert versus Bilal. Gilbert said he wanted to be the backup fighter for Leon and Colby whenever that is. I like it, but I still, throughout all this, I just feel like Bilal is just getting lost in the shuffle, and I don't really know why, but I think Bilal has done enough to get a number one contender fight or fight for the title, or he be the backup fighter. But we'll see what happens. I think Gilbert and Bilal makes a lot of sense. But for Jorge Masvidal, who announces his retirement, he was all game bred. There's not many more fitting names than game bred for a guy like Jorge Masvidal. He, throughout his career, he fought them all, and I think that year that he had in 2019 is on the short list of some of the greatest year that a guy has had in the UFC. For some of you newer fans, John Jones had a great 2011 where he defended the title. I believe it was 4 times. Conor McGregor had a great 2015. But Jorge Masvidal, what he did in 2019, and it came out of nowhere. Masvidal was a up and down journeyman, as people like to call him. He never really strung together. It was just always up and down with him. And a lot of those decisions that he had on his resume, a lot of people felt that he won. I remember Ali Quinta, among others. You would think that, if some of those went the other way, you never know what could have happened. But Masvidal took some time off, and then he did a reality show or whatever. He comes back, his hair is long, he's got a beard and everything. Goes into England, knocks out Darren Till. I remember thinking, yeah, Darren Till they're just trying to get him back on track for him to fight for the belt again. He goes out, Masvidal goes out there, knocks him out, silences the crowd. You could literally hear a pin drop. That's how silent that arena was. Knocked out Darren Till. Follows that up with the fastest knockout in UFC history. I was in attendance for that. It was insane what Masvidal did that day. The flying knee, runs at Ben Askren, the flying knee. Askren just folds, and he is unconscious. He is out cold as soon as the knee lands. I mean, and that just pushed him up to superstardom. It was just crazy to see a guy who's put in so much work over the years, fighting in the Kimbo Slice videos and everything. A guy who fought in Bellator, a guy who fought all of the best guys of the UFC, fought Benson Henderson, fought Gilbert Melendez. He fought them all. And after that Ben Askren knee, he was the ascension to superstardom was just crazy, and it was much deserved to see a guy who had been through so much get that type of notoriety, get that type of publicity. He follows that up with the BMF title fight in Madison Square Garden against Nate Diaz, where he completely took it to Nate Diaz, beat him, battered him for 3 rounds to where the doctors would not let Nate Diaz come out for the 4th round. He's the BMF champion. The Rock's putting the title around him. I mean, in 2019, that was one of the great years a fighter has had. And, he follows that up. He fought for the title twice. He goes to Abu Dhabi on 6 days' notice. It was supposed to be Usman versus Burns. Masvidal steps in on 6 days' notice, flies across the world, cuts to 20 pounds, and he's fighting at that time the most dominant champion in the game, in Kamaru Usman. He didn't get the win, but he had that. I fought him on 6 days' notice on a full camp. What would have happened? Because he had a good first round. He came out and basically put it all, DC said he had 1 round of cardio and Jorge put it all out there, but he lasted an entire 5 rounds. So it was crazy to see. And then you get the rematch where Usman did knock him out. But, for Masvidal to even get to that point, I felt like it was just a huge feather in his cap. He had fallen on hard times because, as the sport has evolved, these guys are getting good. They're good at everything. They're good everywhere. Kamaru Usman, good everywhere. Kobe Covington, cardio king, phenomenal wrestling, the volume striking that he possesses. I mean, it's a tough matchup for Jorge. And Jorge had some moments where he looked good. He dropped Kobe Covington in that fight. But Jorge, for his career, I'm going to always remember someone who was just game, who never backed down from anyone. He's a guy that you show someone who's trying to get into this sport, his heart, his determination, his toughness. You want guys in the future to be like Jorge Masvidal. You want them to go out there and put it all on the line. And that's what he did. And I'm glad that a guy who was born and raised in Miami, who had fought all around in Miami, made a name for himself there, was able to end his career at home with his family and friends in attendance. He wasn't supposed to be there. Masvidal was not supposed to end up where he ended up in the UFC. And so I tip my cap to him. Jorge Masvidal, thank you for all the memories. Thank you for the fantastic fights. Thank you for the fantastic entertainment. You will be missed. And if you ever want to come back, fans would love to have you back, my brother. Rob Font, Adrian Yanez. Now, I expected this to either end early or we were going to get a 3-round war that was going to be fight of the night. But Rob Font looked phenomenal. That jab was on point. Yanez looked fast. He looked quick, but I think Rob Font's just efficiency with that jab and his efficiency when they were exchanging really won him this fight. He was able to land. You could see the effect that it was having on Yanez, and Yanez was landing some good shots too, because we saw how big Rob Font's eye got. But Font was able to land the biggest shots. He was able to stumble Yanez, and he was able to find that kill shot that was just phenomenal. And then he closed the show. I thought that this was one of those fights where we see is Yanez ready. And I walked away from it thinking like Rob Font is good. I remember I saw this tweet and I couldn't unsee it. And this was before the fight. I saw a tweet that said, Yanez Font is giving me Calvin Kattar, Giga Chikadze vibes. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, man, that's true. This fight is kind of like that. But, Yanez is so quick. A lot of the things that we were saying about Giga Chikadze, we're saying about Adrian Yanez. But we're kind of forgetting about how good Rob Font's been for so long. He's always been like just one win away from reaching that title contention status. And a win like this, he's up there. He's going to get a big fight after this because, he's fallen on some tough times. He lost to Aldo. He lost to Cheeto, missed weight in that Cheeto fight. But I think going forward, his next one's going to be a big fight. I think he put himself right back in that conversation of big bantamweight fights going forward. I think he was number 6 coming in. So I don't think that win will elevate him. It might, but I think he'll get somebody in the top 5 next for sure. And for Yanez, man, I think he's still got a bright future. I don't think that this setback is going to be detrimental to his career. I do think that if he would have won, he would have got a top 5 guy next, but I think there's still a lot of fun matchups out there for him. I think, Peter Yan, Adrian Yanez would be great. I think Chito Vera, Adrian Yanez would be great. Dominic Cruz, Davison Figueiredo. There's so many fun matchups. He doesn't even need, there's a lot of matchups outside of the top 15 that you give him. Saeed Nurmagomedov, I think he's ranked, but there's still Jonathan Martinez. Like there's no shortage of great matchups for both of these guys. But Adrian Yanez, that a loss like this, while it halts his trajectory right now, he's still got a lot of fun matchups out there for him that'll get him right back to this point. Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio. Kevin Holland wins it by third round knockout. Kevin Holland, I was a little worried for him. I was a little concerned because he was, going back and forth with Jorge Masvidal, and us as fans, we're kind of like, man, what happened? What's going on? Because these are two guys who we know will fight outside of the UFC. They'll fight outside. They'll fight anywhere. So when those two guys are mixing it up, we want to know like what's going on, what's gonna happen with this. I don't think we really got any answers. It just kind of seems like it was something small, like somebody from Kevin Holland's team or Holland himself called Masvidal baby girl. And then Masvidal said he's a clown. But those are two guys who don't really need to say much. Like, if you want to fight, let's fight. That's just how those two guys are. But I was worried for Holland because I wasn't sure how locked in he was on Ponzinibbio. But in the fight, man, Ponzinibbio was chopping out his legs. He was landing shots, but Kevin Holland shows that the chin is still, his defense and his chin are up there in terms of the best chins that's out there. Holland did a good job, just kind of staying active. I thought Ponzinibbio was more active. I thought Ponzinibbio was winning some rounds. I thought that first round was close, but I think at the end with Holland dropping him, and how about that? He dropped him with his leg up in the air. Like, it just shows like Kevin Holland can generate power from the weirdest places. He rocks Jacare from his back. Down on his back, he rocks Jacare, and then with his leg up in the air, he rocks Ponzinibbio. It was crazy. But I thought after that, he won that first round. In the second round, I thought Ponzinibbio, his activity, I thought he did enough to win that round. And the third round, I thought was close, but of course, Holland closed the show with that shot. Ponzinibbio got up and protested, but I mean, when you face plant, your eyes are, in Never Never Land. I mean, it was a good stoppage. Kevin Holland wins it. Now he caught out Masvidal. Now Masvidal's gone. Even though we would love to see that fight, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that you know, Kevin Holland deserves a top 15 guy. I don't know who you give him. I think this welterweight division is, this division is still getting played out right now. You know, you got Leon maybe fighting Colby, and then you got Bilal, Shavkat. You know, I think some of these guys towards the bottom of the rankings are kind of waiting to see what happens with the top, because, you know, some of these guys could fall. Some of the top guys needing an opponent, you know, could potentially, you know, want to fight some of these lower ranked guys. Off the top of my head, I think what would be a fun fight would be Kevin Holland versus Neil Magny. I think it would be very interesting to see Kevin Holland fight a guy who's kind of similar in size at 170, and see how he fights a guy who's got that grappling, who's got that welterweight pedigree in terms of all the wins that Neil Magny has. So off the top of my head, I think that would be a very fun matchup, but we'll see what they do with Kevin Holland going forward. Now, Raul Rosas Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez wins it by unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. I thought that was an easy fight to score. Rojas started out well in the first round, but with a guy like that, with a guy who gets guys out of there so quick, you wonder what happens when they don't. You wonder what happens after the initial storm. What happens when it clears? What happens after that? So that was my question with him. You know, he talked a lot about wanting to be champion. You see the potential, despite him being just 18 years old. You see the potential, but I thought that Rojas, he put everything into trying to get that win in the first round, and I want to say rightfully so, because that's what he's used to. That's what he's done to everyone else. He didn't get that. And so in the second round, it kind of seemed like Christian Rodriguez kind of figured him out, like he's going to shoot, and I just need to be ready for the shot. And you saw Christian Rodriguez was not letting Raul Rosas get him down, and that knee that he caught him coming in with, I thought that was going to close the show. But I thought that Rojas wanted no parts of the stand-up. I think that's something he really needs to clean up going forward. But Christian Rodriguez did a great job. He showed the holes in Raul Rosas' game. You know, at only 25 years old, it's crazy. Like, there's a 7-year gap in age, but Christian Rodriguez is young in this sport. But you see how calm, how composed that he was when Rodriguez was in danger, and even when he was in dominant positions, he was just cool, calm, and collected. He never rushed anything. You know, it just showed like the experience level that he's gaining in a short amount of time. Rojas is still young. He's still getting that experience. And a loss like this is only going to help him. The guy is 18 years old. The guy's got a whole career ahead of him. So, I mean, this is a setback, but this is only going to make him better, because you see the flaws that he has, and he's got time to work on those things. You know, we've got young guys like Kelvin Gastelum, for instance, who we're going to talk about next. The guy's only 31 years old, and that's mind-blowing to me. But Raul Rosas is 18 years old, and he's gaining experience at this young of an age. I think he's got such a long career ahead of him. The sky's the limit for him for sure. This is just a setback, but I'm sure he'll be back. 18 years old, fighting these grown men who are getting into their man bodies. I mean, Raul Rojas hasn't even touched his man body yet. So I'm excited to see what's next for him. And for Christian Rodriguez as well. He had a tremendous fight, derailed the hype train. I mean, he'll get a big fight next. So we'll see what's next for him. Like I said, there's no shortage of great bantamweight matchups out there. I'm not saying you give him a ranked guy by any means, but I'm saying even the guys outside the top 15, there's guys that is such a deep division that Christian Rodriguez will be in a very exciting fight next. Fight of the night, Kelvin Gastelum versus Chris Curtis. This was a must win for Kelvin Gastelum, and I think he fought that way. He fought like this was a must win fight for him. And, you know, Chris Curtis kind of started slow. I thought the headbutt in the second round kind of derailed him. But Kelvin looked outstanding those first 2 rounds. I thought the third round was very close, but those first 2 rounds, I thought Gastelum got out to such a great start. Curtis showed his toughness. That was a phenomenal fight. Out of all the fights that I've seen this year, that one's on the short list of one of the best fights that I've seen all year. Those guys went at it. Kelvin Gastelum needed a win. His chin is crazy. I mean, some of those shots that Chris Curtis was hitting him with, we've seen Phil Haas fall victim to. We've seen Brandon Allen fall victim to. Joaquin Buckley in the last one fall victim to. But Kelvin Gastelum, his chin is something different. But props to Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, he went to train at Fight Ready with Henry Cejudo, and I think that really helped him. His movement was there. He looked really crisp. He looked really sharp. And just like Joe Rogan said in the post-fight interview, he looked like a world beater. If Kelvin Gastelum fights like that, I mean, we could be looking at Kelvin Gastelum getting back in a title contention soon. But something that Joe Rogan said at the beginning of the fight, I thought really resonated with me. I think it was as soon as the fight started, Joe Rogan said, this is one of the rare times that Kelvin Gastelum is going to be fighting someone who's his size. And I thought that was very interesting. And I'm thinking, like, that's true. Kelvin's been fighting the Israel Adesanyas, the Darren Tills. These guys are so much bigger than Kelvin Gastelum. Chris Curtis is a guy coming up from 170, just like Kelvin Gastelum. They're similar in height. They're similar in size. And I think Kelvin Gastelum was more willing to engage with Chris Curtis, knowing that he's able to get to him in a way that he wasn't able to get to some of these bigger guys. The size difference that Kelvin goes through in this division is just crazy. But it was very interesting to see him fight someone like Chris Curtis, who is similar in size. That was just a tremendous fight. Chris Curtis, throughout his UFC run, I think this was his first true loss. I think, the Jack Hermanson fight, he took that on short notice. You kind of understand that one. But other than this one against Gastelum, he's been pretty much flawless in his UFC career. But, great fight from both guys. And they deserve the fight of the night. They deserve the $50K bonus. So I'm happy for both of those guys. Lastly, I'll bring up Joe Pyfer, body bags, beat Joe Pyfer. I thought this was a big step up in experience for him against Joe Mearshart. I didn't know, Pyfer looked big. He looked his back. That's one of the first things that you notice on someone when they've gained some size is their back. But he looked like he put on some muscle. I wondered how he was going to respond to the grappling exchanges. We didn't really see that. The shot that he landed, it looked like it barely clipped him, but you can just see the power that he generates from a shot like that. Followed up with it was a left followed by a right. Mearshart goes down, and it was a wrap from there. The ref could have stepped in a little bit sooner. Mearshart was just covering up, but I think the UFC's got something with Joe Pyfer. Beating a guy like Mearshart, that's no easy task. Mearshart looked incredible in his last two fights. Since that Khamzat Chimaev loss, he's looked really good, and Joe Pyfer got him out of there early. So I was very impressed by that. It was a great performance. I'm excited to see what's next for him. The middleweight division, in a division that needs some fresh faces. They've got Bo Nickel and they've got Joe Pyfer. I'm not saying that they're ready for the title or anything like that, but it's refreshing knowing that we've got, Izzy, who's back as the dominant champion, who's beaten all these guys. But we've got some guys coming up who could possibly give Izzy some trouble. Luana Pejedo had a great fight with Michelle Rodderson Gomez, split decision win. Luby Godinez defeats Cynthia Calvillo by split decision. Sam Hughes had a big win. You also had Incognito Bahamundes over Trey Ogden. Steve Garcia with a big win. So UFC 287, all in all, just a tremendous night. A tremendous night of fights. Israel Adesanya gets the belt back. Jorge Masvidal calls it a career. Rob Font gets a big time win, but gets right back in the conversation in the bantamweight division. Kevin Holland gets back on track at 170. Kristen Rodriguez defeats Raul Rosas Jr. Derails the hype train. Phenomenal night of fights, man. But next week we got the return of Max Holloway fighting against Arnold Allen, and this is a phenomenal card. But for a fight night, this is a phenomenal card. We'll be in Kansas City, Missouri. But Max Holloway, Arnold Allen, it's as good as it gets at 145. Max Holloway, the former dominant champion at featherweight, just can't beat Alexander Volkanovski, but Arnold Allen is a guy I think he deserved a title shot, but if you're not going to get a title shot, this is the fight you want to get. You get a guy like Max Holloway who, if you beat Max Holloway, you become undeniable. And I think that the matchup itself is very, very interesting. You know, Max Holloway only loses to a guy like Alexander Volkanovski. Is Arnold Allen that guy? Is he that good? We don't know. We'll find out. The book is still out on Arnold Allen, but he's good. You know, he beat Sadiq Youssef. He's beaten so many guys, and the Calvin Kattar fight ended how it ended. So we don't really know what he looks like over 5 rounds. I think this is the one. This is the one where we find out the questions that we need answered with Arnold Allen. And then Max Holloway, it's business as usual. He's fighting these contenders. I don't know what his end goal is, but I do think, you know, Yair Rodriguez is fighting Alexander Volkanovski for the title in July. If we see a new champion, who knows? Maybe Max Holloway gets a title shot. We'll see. But as of now, Max Holloway has lost to the champ 3 times, and he's fighting. He's basically become the guy in order to get to Volkanovski. If you beat Max Holloway, you're ready for Volkanovski. You know, some of these guys. Like Yair, he lost to Max, but he did beat Josh Emmett for the interim title. Like I said, I think that this is the next best thing outside of an actual title fight, fighting a guy like Max Holloway. So the matchup itself is phenomenal. I can't wait for it. We got a banger of a co-main event in the featherweight division with Edson Barboza and Billy Q, Pedro Munoz and Chris Gutierrez. We got Clay Guida, Rafa Garcia, Iwan Kutalaba versus Tanner Boser, who's coming down from heavyweight. Dustin Jacoby versus Amazat Mirzakhanov. So this is a great main card. We've even got some great prelims. Brandon Royval versus Mateus Nicolau, Bill Algeo, TJ Brown, Zach Cummings, and Ed Herman. Lando Venata versus Daniel Zellhuber. So Kansas City is going to be lit up next Saturday. I can't wait for it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This was the first episode of Morning Brew. But like I said, I'll be having guests on to help me break these fights down. And this is going to be a fun ride, man. So tune in, lock in with me. And I can't wait for the next one, man. Peace. Right.